So good morning and welcome. I'm Emily. This is the MASSCreative's virtual policy and action update for June 26th. I'm here with Team MASSCreative, including Tracy, Selassie, Sophia, Ian, Simone, and Danny. And I'm also really pleased to welcome two guest members or speakers today. So Harold Stewart, the co-executive producing director of the Theater Offensive, and Tegan George, the deputy director of Mass Vote. So without further ado, happy Create the Vote Week. So I'm really pleased that we on Wednesday launched Create the Vote 2020. I'm pretty sure some of you already on the call already signed up to join us in this effort, but that's going to take up most of our time. So Tracy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you. So yes, we launched Create the Vote this week, which is very exciting. You may have noticed that this year's Create the Vote looks a little bit different because we are focusing on or reacting to the two crises that we're dealing with, the COVID-19 pandemic and also the racial injustice and police brutality and the social uprising and response. And so we have catered Create the Vote to be able to provide you an opportunity to take action. This year's Create the Vote is focused all around increasing voter participation through nonpartisan voter registration, education, and turnout. But we couldn't have done it alone in reframing this year's Create the Vote. We did it with a Create the Vote steering committee that we're very, very proud and honored to work with. Including both Harold from the Theater Offensive and Tegan and Jay from Mass Vote. So I want to pass it off to both Harold and Tegan to talk a little bit about their work and how Create the Vote has taken on a new form this year.
Thank you, Tracy and everyone. So good to be here. So I'm going to speak briefly about, I'm new to Boston. I've been here 3 years. And at the Theater Offensive, when planning our programs, we think about a couple of things: civic engagement, cultural strategy, and then what actions or programs do we create around them. And in the fall, thinking about, okay, what are some major issues that we can build civic engagement and creative strategy around? The national election came up. And really making sure we are a queer and trans people of color organization, that we were engaging with community building and issue analysis and then creative programming around the things that concerned our particular community. And one of the things one of the things that, is that me or somebody? I'm only on one thing. So I'll keep talking. Okay. Is that we wanted to build with national, local, and regional partners. And so we had identified the national and regional ones. And when thinking about who could be a local partner towards this effort, MASSCreative was top of our list on the cultural side and policy side. So I reached out to Tracy and them to say, hey, I got this idea. We're thinking about this thing called Vote Offensively, QTPOC, the VOTE. Hey, can we work together? And that's when I actually learned that they had done work in this area before towards Create the Vote. And then from there, you know, it sealed the deal and we began to build this iteration of Create the Vote.
Great, thanks, Harold. Good morning, everybody. Today I'm speaking on behalf of my organization, Mass Vote, as well as my colleague that's unfortunately under the weather, Jay Cottle. And so at Mass Vote, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit that focuses on grassroots organizing, civic education, voter turnout, voter participation, all that sort of thing among historically disenfranchised communities, as well as young voters, new voters, all that jazz. So as far as our involvement in this Create the Vote steering committee and initiative writ large, the creative community is comprised of many of our core constituency that I mentioned before. And in these unprecedented times, we want to make sure to spread our message as far as we can. We also wanted to tap into the creativity and the unique and really treasured skill sets that this community has and holds and encourages and spreads, and to explore new ways to do our work. So we are thrilled to work with Tracy and Emily and Harold and all of the amazing other steering committee and other members, and looking forward to seeing how the work grows and spreads in the future. So thank you.
Great, thanks Harold and Tegan. This is the first time that we've had outside MASSCreative guests, so I'm so glad that you two get to be the first. We've shared this before, but to just do a little place setting, we've shared our Create the Vote goals, but just to remind everyone of what exactly we're trying to do, the top goal of Create the Vote 2020 is to increase civic engagement and strengthen democracy. We want to do that with the creative community, so we're asking you to engage your staff, your board members, and your patrons in this work. And we want to build the steering committee as well as all of our partners so that we can reach underrepresented communities, including BIPOC young people, including queer and trans youth, working class people and families, and new citizens. The second goal is to increase participation in the September 1st state primary and the November 3rd state election. And we want to do that through nonpartisan voter education, registration, and turnout. And that's where we'll be leaning on partners like MassVote, who that's their core work to be able to direct you directly into those actions. And then additional goals, we want to work on the 2020 census to make sure we have a fair and complete count, and want to make sure that we're increasing representative democracy by increasing participation in the census. And then we know that the arts and cultural communities are already civic leaders in the creative work that you do, but not everyone knows that. And so we want to use this campaign to position the creative community as a leader in civic life and strengthening democracy. So you may be asking what you can do. So this week we launched Create the Vote, as you know, with the pledge to create the vote that allows you to say, okay, I want to engage in education, in registration, in turnout, and on what levels and with what constituencies that you work with. We encourage you to fill out that pledge to vote. It's a Google form that allows you to identify your level of engagement. And then we're asking you not just to take individual action on your, as a personal being, but also as a representative of the organizations that you work with. And then not stopping there, but going beyond and helping to create a ripple effect by sharing it out. So taking that individual and that collective action. So we worked with a great designer, Melissa Hines, to be able to create a set of really great graphics that will allow you to share out the campaign on your various platforms. And in classic MassCreative fashion, we want to make it really easy for you to access it at whatever level you're comfortable with, not needing to recreate the wheel. So we have lots of sample language through emails and blog posts that you can post to your network, sample social posts, graphics. And then if you're nervous about engaging in elections, either as an individual or as a nonprofit organization, it's completely legal. There's just some rules. So our great intern Danny and Emily helped to put together the nonprofit and elections one-pager that helps to go through the do's and don'ts. So I am actually going to pass this back to Harold and to Tegan to talk a little bit about, we're definitely encouraging folks to not just do these traditional online actions, but also to integrate it into your own programming and figure out how you can use Create the Vote to also drive your organization's mission or your personal work and your personal mission. So Harold, can you talk a little bit about this before we pass it to Emily for our policy updates?
Yes. So obviously when I said we started on this in the fall, we worked at the Theater Offensive towards beautiful programming on all scales, right? And then Miss Rona has come to visit us. So we're rethinking what programs we can do virtually, again, at different scales, just starting with just collecting. We're a storytelling organization. How do we do story circles to understand how queer and trans people of color are engaging around voting? And then that series of programs led up to a full-scale production. So we're still trying to figure out the iterative build, but our Create the Vote connections and partnerships will be a part of all of that. And one thing that we're really excited about is figuring out youth engagement. So we work on the creative youth development model that works with youth from 14 to like 22. So we have some young people who are eligible to vote, and then some who are very close. So we're thinking about ways to engage them now, and this for civic action, and even how to kind of influence folks if they can't vote, who may be voting from their household or their communities.
Excellent. So we encourage you to fill out the pledge, start to figure out what level of engagement you're looking to do on a personal and an organizational level, and to think about how you can integrate this into your own program as well. So a huge thank you to Harold and Tegan for joining us and for all the work that you do on the steering committee to help make this a great campaign and help us hit all the goals. So passing it to Emily to take us through our policy and action, or our policy and action portion. But before I do that, I want to share the contact info of Harold and Tegan and Jay. And as a reminder for folks, all of this will be available post the policy and action update. So look out for that if you're looking for those resources. One more slide, and I promise, I'm just trying to, get all I can in here. I guess every week I share what other additional advocacy actions there are. So Create the Vote is our big priority right now, but we also want to make sure that you know that there's other actions you can take, including advocating for arts education, reaching out to your members of Congress and your state legislators around all of the work that both those bodies are doing around their COVID response and their other priorities. Okay, back to Emily.
Thanks, Trace. So really, I'm going to be real quick here. So there are a couple of things that are happening on the federal level. Look for our policy and action review email on Monday, and we'll include them there. But this has been Money Week up at the State House. So there were 3 things that started to move, and we've been expecting this for a while. So the first one is the final fiscal year 21 supplemental budget for the year. This is basically how the state pays its bills for after the yearly budget is passed. In addition to that, there's also other amendments that get attached. And in this case, one of them, Representative Williams, filed an amendment to make Juneteenth a legal holiday in Massachusetts. It passed and was included in the House version. It's now over in the Senate. We're working with partners to advocate that that be included as well in the Senate version. Then the next piece is that there is a jobs bill. It's an economic development bond bill that's going to get a hearing today. That's the reason this is important, is that right now there's no sort of relief or programs or conversation about the creative sector in that economic development bill. We are going to submit testimony to encourage that the committee include the creative community in that bill. We will stand up an info page about how you can do that as well. The hearing is today, but testimony can be filed until Wednesday. And then finally, or not even finally, just the beginning. So the fiscal year 21 state budget, which I know we've all been thinking and talking about for a while. So they are moving on. They are moving with a 1/12 budget, which means that they're just going to pay their bills for July and work to try to figure out the budget over the summer. The House was supposed to file a draft of their version of the budget on July 1st. They've already announced that they're going to miss that deadline. And Baker in a press conference said that one of the reasons is that there's not enough information about tax revenue. So the filing deadline for taxes was moved from April to July, and that will give them a better indication of what they can expect. All of this is important, and all of this requires advocacy from a couple of different perspectives, both in terms of making sure the creative sector gets money and gets safety nets to help us through this economic and public health crisis. And then the other thing that we're really looking hard on is education, and how education dollars need to be protected. We are going over this week, and I apologize. So the next slide is reopening. So I want to make sure to touch on this. So we expect that Baker is going to, here's what I expect. I expect that in maybe an hour, Baker is going to make an announcement that phase 3 has been pushed off to start on July 6th. It was supposed to start on Monday. If I were a betting woman, that's the bet I would place, is that he's going to make that announcement. The piece that I don't know where I would place the bet is when we're going to expect guidance. So we are working really hard to make sure that the creative sector, that as much of the creative sector that's going to open in phase 3 gets clear guidance, that it makes sense based on our industries and on our different models of how we do our work. And it isn't just a one size fits all. But I don't know yet when we are going to see that guidance. I would, if I were a betting woman, I would place a bet that it's going to look very similar in format and template to all the other guidance that's been released for other industries. So if you don't know what that looks like, if you go on the state's reopening plan, you will see individual reopening directions and checklists for other industries. It's probably going to look very similar. We just want to make sure that it makes sense for our industries and the way we do our work. So that is imminent. We are really advocating to make sure our voices are heard. Then, so DESE, there's also some information about DESE. We'll include that in the policy and action review. But the big thing is that plan is saying that schools need to plan for in-school learning, remote learning, and a hybrid model. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the MASSCreative team. If you have a question, if you have some feedback, email us, follow us on the socials. And then finally, I am so excited to celebrate and thank Tracy Konopinski for her unbelievable work over the last 7 years. Today, Tracy is flying the coop from MASSCreative, and she's kindly included her personal email if you want to make sure you can drop her a note. Tracy, we are cheering you on your next adventure. You are just a phenomenal arts leader, and we are all better thanks to your work. Trace, take it away.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you all. I saw all of your kisses and your claps and your waves, and I feel it here. Yeah, I've been at MASSCreative for 7 years. It's been an incredible honor and an incredible privilege. It's been so meaningful and so fun because of the folks who I've gotten to work with on the MASSCreative team and in communities all across Massachusetts. So please keep in touch. I'm not disappearing, and I know that we will work together in other ways. So with that, we want to invite you to join us not next Friday, but the following Friday on July 10th for our next virtual policy and action update. The MASSCreative team will take it away. Registration is in the chat box. And in classic Emily fashion, I would like to send you off and say, have a lovely weekend. I hope that you get rest, you get some rest and you find some wonder, and that you spend some time outside. Bye all.